Hi, and welcome to today's Learningtech.org webinar, E-Rate Funding Year 2026 Kickoff. My name is Kelly Birch, and I'm an E-Rate consultant here at Learning Tech. I'll be your moderator for today's session. We're so glad that you could join us as we explore the latest updates and timelines designed to help you make the most of your E-Rate opportunities this year. Before we get started, I have a few quick housekeeping notes. If you have questions during the presentation, please type them into the question box. You'll find it at the top of your screen marked with a white question mark. We'll review the questions and share answers at the end of the session. Now I'm very excited to introduce you to our presenters. Our first speaker is Eileen Miller, who has been involved in the E-Rate process since 2005. Eileen leads our E-Rate efforts as Vice President of E-Rate and Technology Planning here at Learning Tech. She'll guide us through today's topic and share valuable insights from her years of experience. We'll also hear from Mark Miller, the founder of Learning Tech. Mark started the organization in 2000 and serves as our president and executive director. He's earned his doctorate in electrical engineering and computer science from MIT, specializing in applying artificial intelligence to education. He also teaches graduate level computer science at Northeastern University in Silicon Valley. The first slide that you see is our Learning Tech team. We've all worked in E-Rate and educational technology for a very long time, and our goal is very simple: to help schools, libraries, and districts in any way that we can. We lead you through the complicated process so you clearly understand your options and opportunities with E-Rate. Our next slide is our agenda. We're going to take a look at the agenda, and first we're going to take a quick overview on who is Learning Tech, tell you a little bit about us, and then move to who's eligible for E-Rate, funding and discounts that are available, recent program changes, some examples of funding, key rules for success, and then what are the next steps. We'll wrap up with a question and answer session and take as much time as needed to answer your questions. Since the recording started a little late, let's catch up on the opening story that Mark shared in the beginning. Back in the late 1990s, our founder, Mark Miller, was working as a lab director in Apple's Advanced Technology Group when he received a letter from his son's school, and it said, "Good news, your son has been selected for our GATE program. Bad news, there is no GATE program." And with that, we'll join Mark as he continues the story.
The bad news is there is no GATE program. So at that point, I started volunteering to deliver a GATE course at 7 a.m. on my way to Apple. And I was bringing sort of pre-product prototypes from Apple to teach a STEM computer science sort of course where they could do things like program a robot that was made out of Legos using HyperCard on the early Macs. So they're already very slow internet. One day, as we're working, got completely turned off district-wide. Nobody knew why. So I went to the superintendent and said, I'm actually kind of getting ready to depart from Apple. Why don't you hire me for one day as a consultant? Let me see if I can figure this out. What's going on with your internet? So it turned out they had a program called Education First, which was Pacific Bell offering ISDN service to schools for free for 1 year. But the year was up. So my first theory is I went to the business manager and said, "You sure you paid the bill?" That wasn't the problem. So I dug a little deeper and I started looking at the router configurations. It turned out the routers were dialing the phone number for the free version. And of course, they weren't eligible anymore. No one told them that after they paid, they also had to go reconfigure the routers to dial the correct phone numbers. So problem solved. All schools were up and running by the end of the day. But I also noticed in the course of doing all this, man, this internet's really slow. ISDN is not a great technology. Aren't there better things? And in those days, the better thing was a T1 line, which of course is way too slow in modern times. So I tried to find out, there must be some resources, some government program or something like that to allow schools to get better internet. And that's when I found out about E-Rate, which was actually just being rolled out in 1998. So I applied on behalf of the district. I was still a volunteer finishing my gig at Apple. The result was we managed to get the funding to bring the entire district up to T1 lines, which at that time was the gold standard. Ultimately, they became our first paying client, and they remain a client to this day. They shared their story with other nearby jurisdicts, and pretty soon we were adding lots of clients. So by the year 2000, I was needing to hire people. So I decided to incorporate. I needed helpers. In order to do that and make the emphasis still be about helping schools and not be mainly about making money, I incorporated us as a nonprofit. So to this day, that first district remains a happy client. And in fact, we almost never lose a client. We have 28 years of E-rate experience, which is the entire history of the E-rate program. And we get many, many five-star testimonials that are posted on the Great Nonprofits website. Thanks.
Yeah. Next. Yeah, this is still you, Mark.
Yes. Okay. So I was just waiting for it to come up. Okay. So the best E-rate applications don't start with how can I maximize my money, because the program doesn't really work that way, and the money is still precious, and you want to spend it wisely. So what you start with is you really should have an educational technology plan. Now it doesn't have to be the formal kind that used to be required for the program, but you should have thought it through and maybe written some things down. What are we trying to accomplish? What's our vision for the education that our district provides? And that turns into, and hopefully we'll see a picture of a vision, maybe not. And there it is, yeah, a vision. From that vision, you try to build a mission for what is it that I want the technology to accomplish. Now, some of the things you needed to accomplish won't be eligible for the funding in the program, and others will be. And what you shouldn't do is redesign your way of solving it in order to maximize the money, unless it's really a better solution. Uh, so when you start with a vision, you try to understand the mission of the technology. And by the way, the people designing this shouldn't simply be the IT department. They have a very important role to play, particularly in turning the vision into a technology mission. But the teachers need to be involved, the superintendent, the business managers. It's a good idea to have a parent, as long as they're not there representing a tech company that wants to sell you stuff. And if depending on the age group and so on, it's not a bad idea to have one of the high school students on a committee to help figure out what are we trying to do with the technology. And from there, you develop a strategy to have the E-rate program pay for as much of what's eligible as possible. But don't contort your technology to do something over the rules of the program, because they'll probably change next year anyway. Thanks.
Next up. Okay.
Oops.
I think we're waiting for the mission to come up. Why don't we keep going?
All right. There we go.
Okay.
All right. Did you have other comments, Mark, or shall I move on?
That's okay. I think we should move on.
Okay. So Learningtech.org does more than just E-rate. E-rate management services is kind of our big thing. But we also provide technology planning services. We've done dozens and dozens of technology plans for our clients, particularly back in the day when the E-rate program required a technology plan in order to be eligible for the program. But we also offer network consulting. Our IT team facilitates each of our E-rate planning recaps and RFPs, providing technical quality assurance on those documents, so that we make sure we're not soliciting for a switch that might be end of life next year, for example. But our IT team also offers distinct service separate from the E-rate planning work that provides one-on-one advice for clients who need unbiased guidance on their network design and troubleshooting. Our final area of expertise, this is Mark's personal baby, is computer science. And maybe you have a couple words on that, Mark?
Well, I would just say that we have a lot of exciting things going on now, for example, and scary things as well. Everyone's thinking about AI and what does it mean for my school right now and so on. This is actually an area I've been publishing papers about since the 1970s. It's a pretty important area. It's changing very, very quickly. And I would simply start by saying, don't make a policy for something you haven't understood yet, or don't make a policy you can't change. That's what happened in New York City schools, for example. And invest in not only professional learning, but also you need to have time for the teachers, just release time, mess and learn time to play with this technology and understand how it can help them and how they can deal with their worry about students cheating and that sort of thing. Thanks.
Good. So it's the complement of all these related knowledges that make us particularly good at the E-Rate program. Our collaboration offers obviously the deep expertise of E-Rate, and also the technical expertise to guide a future-proof strategy for your specific network. Relief from the rules and the deadlines. Hopefully we're taking care of all of that for you, as well as making sure that you get the funding that you are eligible for. How do we do this? Our planning recap is the single most important collaboration tool. It summarizes all of the planning meetings, conversations, and emails, all of which formulate the E-Rate actions that are going to be taken for the upcoming funding year, both the next year's applications and follow-up on the prior year's applications. At any given time, we're actually working on 3 different funding years, making sure the discounts are being applied from last year, making sure the execution of the current year, that the installations are happening, that all of the follow-up forms besides the application are being processed and handled in a timely fashion, as well as planning for the next funding year. So right now in 2025, we are working on planning for 2026, hence our kickoff for that particular funding year. One of the ways that we keep on track for all of our clients, for all of their deadlines, for all of their funding years is using our internally developed database, which pulls information from the E-Rate administrator, also known as USAC, in case everybody has heard that name before. I've slipped sometimes, I forget to call them the administrator. So we pull the data from the administrator and add our own information regarding our clients' individual specific needs and status. Hopefully relieving you of all that constant monitoring and worrying. Okay, let's move on to talk about what is eligible for E-Rate. We're going to talk about the who, what, where, and how much of E-Rate. To be eligible for the E-Rate program, there are 3 different categories of entities or applicants. Schools, obviously. School is defined by its state law, and each state law is a little bit different. Some states allow for pre-K to be eligible for discounts or be considered, quote, a school. Some states allow for adult education. There's a table that you can look all this stuff up, but basically you have to be a school as defined by your state. It can be a public school, private school, nonprofit, a charter, a tribal school. As long as you are a school defined by your state, you're a school. If you have a state school code, you're a school. Okay. Now you can't have an endowment that exceeds $50 million. I know you're rolling your eyes thinking, yeah, right, I wish. But there's actually one example. The King Kamehameha schools in Hawaii have a $15 billion endowment. So there you have it.
No E-Rate for them.
No. You cannot operate as a for-profit business. Okay. Next category is libraries. And I don't think we have any attendees who are libraries, but we'll touch on this briefly. Again, this is a definition as established by the FCC, the federal program, through the Library Services and Technology Act. The budget for a library has to be separate from any school, so you can't apply for both the school and for the library that's part of your school, and again, may not operate as a for-profit business. Now, the third category is sometimes kind of confusing. It's called a consortium. Consortia are not allowed to receive discounts directly. They're the umbrella, if you will, for a group of schools or libraries. It could be a combination of schools and libraries. Then they can apply for E-Rate on behalf of their consortium members. Again, cannot operate as a for-profit business. Okay. So let's move to, I was going to mention too that in California, several people may recognize the name of CENIC, C-E-N-I-C, or the HSN K-12, the high-speed network for K-12, are consortia. Belonging to those consortia helps that organization obtain contracts for a broader audience, and you can even leverage those contracts independently if you're a member of that consortium. Sorry, I let you jump ahead of me. So what is eligible for E-rate discounts? The E-rate program is a federal program, $4 billion of funding every year. So annually, there's $4 billion available. There are two main categories of service. Category 1, which includes internet access and wide area network data transmission. There are a variety of ways that the internet access can be delivered to your school, and several of our clients use each of these different kinds of categories. Some microwave service, satellite service, least split fiber, all of those things are eligible under Category 1. Now, I'll mention that prior to the E-rate modernization order in 2014, this was called Priority 1. And the reason it was is because by definition, the Priority 1 services, all of them were funded before any other services. So the whole point of E-rate is to get internet into the classroom. The other category is Category 2, also previously called Priority 2, because if there was money left after all of the Priority Category 1 services were funded, then there would money be available for Category 2, which includes the internal network components that bring the internet actually into the classroom. So switches and access points and cabling and so forth. The same rule still applies. Category 2 is funded after Category 1, provided there's money left in the $4 billion fund. But some of the rules have changed, and we'll get into much more detail on that shortly. Okay, so last year, we all thought we were going to get bus Wi-Fi and hotspots. Of course, if you're watching the news, the last couple of days, we are clearly not getting funding for bus Wi-Fi or hotspots. So, sorry about that. Alrighty, have I touched on everything there? Oh, Mark, you had an anecdote about the planning and making sure that you go ahead.
Yes, thank you. So so I want to give an example of why the planning is so critically important. On one of our projects, I guess a few years ago, I was called to a school site, and they had just gotten a new portable, and they wanted to know what it would take to connect that portable to the internet, like the rest of the schools on the campus. So as we're sitting there looking at the portable and talking, I noticed that we're standing next to a long stretch of drying asphalt. It turned out they had just finished covering a large trench where they had pulled in electrical power the day before. If they'd had a plan, they could have saved digging a second trench right next to it, potentially saving tens of thousands of dollars to pay contractors to show up with shovels. So it's really important to have thought it through before you start executing, if possible. You save a lot of money without having to get a discount. And by the way, if it seems like you're getting redundant services, they will not pay for all of it. Thank you.
Good point. Okay, let's go on then to talk about where E-rate discounts are eligible. The school instructional sites, obviously, we're trying to get internet to the classroom. So Category 1 is eligible, and the means of getting the internet to the classroom. The internal connections, Category 2 is also eligible. Similarly, for library patron sites, Category 1 and Category 2 are both eligible. But if you have other facilities known as non-instructional facilities, such as a bus barn or maybe your district office or a cafeteria, you're still allowed to have discounts on Category 1, but not on Category 2. There are a few exceptions in all of the E-rate rules. One of the exceptions is that if your non-instructional facility, perhaps a data center, is the hub of your network, then you can have Category 2 funding for the components that move the internet to the classroom. But the access points for everybody else who works in that building are not eligible. Okay. All right. Let's go to how. How are E-rate discounts calculated? There are two components to how E-rate discount calculations are made. One is what the eligibility of your students for free or reduced lunch and the other is whether or not your facility is in an urban or a rural area. So for an example, because this is a little bit complicated, let's say you have 710 students who are eligible for free or reduced lunch, and you have 1,000 students in total. So the percentage of eligible students versus total students is 71%. Okay, now you go to the administrator's matrix to find where you fit on that table. 71% falls in the range of 50 to 74%. Therefore, you get 80% discount if you're an urban school, or 80% discount if you're a rural school. You see that there, oh wait, a couple of exceptions. If you drop down to the next row to the 75 to 100% eligibility range, you'll see that 90% is the discount rate for category 1 and 85% is the discount rate for category 2. One more exception, tribal libraries get 90% on everything. So I think it covers that. Let's move on to board. Oh, I'm sorry. I think you wanted to say.
I just wanted to make a short comment about the. It's all based on the free and reduced lunch count. I just want to emphasize it doesn't matter if you actually serve lunch. It doesn't even matter if you serve lunch to all of your students, and it most certainly doesn't matter if they actually eat the lunch. It just matters what the percentage of students who are eligible is.
Okay. So next, category 2. There are a lot of questions around category 2 because I'd say it's a relatively new concept. It was introduced in 2014 with the modernization order. What the FCC realized was that because of the priority 1 getting funded first, category 1 being funded first, category 2 being funded next, if there was enough money, and working from top down in terms of the highest discount rates, applicants getting the money first, they realized is all of the smaller organizations and all of the organizations with lower discounts were never getting any access to category 2 funding. And they decided that was pretty unfair, which I'm sure all of the lower discount entities thought too. So they came up with this scheme where they said, okay, well, let's set a cap on how much money you can have discounts for based on how large your organization is. And they established the category 2 pre-discount 5-year budget. Each one of those words, it's a mouthful, I know. Each one of those words are important. So category 2 is obviously the switches, access points, and so forth. Pre-discount means cost. How much does the stuff cost? And then the 5-year is the cycle. Every 5 years, there's a refreshed cycle for the category 2 budget. You can have discounts on everything up to your budget. Okay, so maybe let's look at examples because that's a little bit complicated. Now the really good news though is that the multiplier for the budget has been increased significantly for this upcoming budget cycle of 2026 to 2030. That's the 5-year cycle that we're just about to enter. And I want to reiterate that there is no cap for category 1. Whatever it costs to get internet to your school is what you're allowed to have discounts on. For category 2, you can't go over your maximum category 2 pre-discount budget in terms of the cost for which you will be able to receive discounts. Pardon me. So just a couple of examples. I know there's a lot of text in there. But the big increase was from $167 to $201.57 per student. It's like 20% increase. It's huge. Everybody was flabbergasted and thrilled, of course. If you only have 150 students, then your maximum pre-discount cost that you would be allowed to have discounts on would be $30,000, $235.50. So that's kind of, we put that number there specifically so that we'd be able to show kind of the range. Now, we talked about a school that had 1,000 students, so they would have $201,570 of pre-discount C2 budget. Library numbers are there on the right. There's also the premise that while you can't go over your maximum budget amount, You also are allowed to have a minimum amount. So the floor for both schools and libraries in terms of category 2 pre-discount 5-year budget is $30,175. So you can see kind of like if you have 149.7 students, that would be the floor. And that's how that was established. So category 2 budget is pre-discount. That's the maximum amount that you can have discounts on. The discounts range from 20 to 85% of the pre-discount cost, unless you're a library, then tribal library, and then you get 90%. I was going to say one more thing about that. I was going to say that you can spend more than that. You just can't have discounts on more than that. Okay, next we have an example. So let us assume that your organization has a category 2 pre-discount 5-year budget of $100,000. And you want to do a project that turns out is going to cost $51,000. So 50 of that is eligible, but 1,000 is not eligible. This might be because you're going to put some security cameras up, and the cabling to the security camera is not eligible, so it has to be cost allocated out of your $51,000 project. Excuse me. So $50,000 are eligible. So if you happen to have a 70% discount, for example, you would have a $35,000 total for discounts on this project. Yeah, you still have to pay your share. And if you have a 70% discount, then you have 30% applicant share. So you would be responsible for paying $15,000, so 30% of the $50,000. But you also have to pay the ineligible amount out of pocket. You don't get discounts on the $1,000 that are not eligible. Once your project is complete, you still have $50,000 remaining for the remaining of the 5-year cycle. So it might be next year that you apply again for category 2, or you might spread it out. It just depends on your own needs for each of the different projects. Okay. Next, please. Thank you. We like to say that E-rate is a process, not an event. Lots of people think you just submit the application and you magically get the money. When in fact, there's a whole lot of work that has to go into it before you even submit the application. Now, a funding year is July 1 through June 30. That aligns with your school year, it aligns with the fiscal years. All Category 1 services must be delivered during the fiscal for the funding year of 7/1 to 6/30. Category 2 has a couple of special rules, which allows you to install a little bit earlier than the July 1 and finish a little bit later than the June 30. And that's basically because the FCC has realized it's much easier for schools to do network component projects when the students are not in the school. Let's see. So what should you be doing in each of these different quarters of a fiscal year? Well, the first quarter, you should be doing planning. This is where we are now, is to say, I need this new internet contract because my old contract is up, or I need to get new switches because mine have now reached end of life. So all of the planning that goes into what do I need for funding year 2026 should be happening now. You want to be clear with technical specifications, and very importantly, project coordination. Your finance department and your procurement department, as well as your IT department, should be involved in this discussion. And coincidentally, in the background, in September, towards the end of that quarter, Learningtech is handling all the prior year funding follow-up to make sure that the discounts have actually been applied and so forth. Okay, so in the fall quarter, this is when competitive bidding has to be done. And it's because you have to do all of these steps ahead of time before you actually submit the application later in March. So competitive bidding would include things like posting an RFP. For E-rate, you must wait a minimum of 28 days to allow all interested parties to bid on your solicitation. Your solicitation for both products and services might include a walkthrough, for example. It might include answering questions that vendors have submitted, saying, well, what kind of handoff do you need for that category 1? Or am I going to have to bore through concrete to do this cabling project? So that's what needs to be done during that fall quarter. We get to January. Now you will have received proposals in the meantime, and you would be in a position now to evaluate all the proposals that you've received. Make a vendor selection, make a formal award, and any follow-up contract details that might need to be signed or prepared. Now, after you've done all of that, you're in a position where you can submit an application for the funding on what you've decided you need and want and contracted for. The application goes in March, generally towards the end of March. And when people say, well, what does this do? And if we tell them the window closes in March, they think, oh man, I got plenty of time. You really don't, because you got to do all this other stuff ahead of time in order to have a smooth and accurate E-rate application. Okay, now hit the spring. Your application has been submitted, and the administrator is now reviewing your application. Every single application submitted to the E-rate administrator is reviewed. Sometimes the administrative reviewer has a couple questions. If you're new to E-rate, they're going to say, well, you're going to have to prove that you're a school, at which point you share your state ID number. You're going to have to prove that you don't have an endowment greater than $50 million, at which point you share some financials. And once all of those questions have been reviewed and answered and approved, you would get a funding commitment decision letter, an FCDL. Boy, are we ever happy when we see those FCDLs coming in. Which includes not just, yeah, you got all the money, but sometimes you got most of the money, because sometimes there are some little details, either the vendor didn't add correctly on their proposal, and you would be surprised how often that happens, or some other small detail, in which case then the administrator says you get this much, but you can't have that individual small piece. Finally, you're thinking, oh boy, I'm done with this project, but you're not, because you're up to now planning for the July implementation of your new internet service contract, or of your delivery of your equipment to be installed in the course of the summer. Let me see, what else do I want to share in here? Okay, so we were talking about competitive bidding, and I should have asked Mark to share one really good story he has about.
So yeah, you could go to the next slide for that. I also should mention that in the May-June timeframe, or maybe July, you're also having to submit invoices from the previous stuff before you actually get the money.
That's true.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's a very full process.
Yeah.
So go ahead, Eileen. I think I'll wait till the last bullet on this slide to make my comment.
I also wanted to share that, you know, we also say that E-rate is a team sport. It requires the IT staff to be involved. It requires the finance team to be involved, procurement team, operations, in order to coordinate all of the work that needs to get done. You really have to work together. Okay, so some key rules to remember. First of all, no vendor conversations before bidding. Is this maybe where you want to share that comment?
Yeah, this would be a good spot. Yeah,
Okay.
so let me tell you about a situation where a vendor tried to engage in a conversation before bidding. And we're talking about a very large major school district, and Learning Tech is their consultant. And we're actually there for a walkthrough, I believe it was. So after the walkthrough, I get a call from the rep, from one of the major bidders, who was, you know, pretty likely to win. And the rep says, hey, so why don't you and I go out for a round of golf and dinner? It'd be my treat, and I can explain to you how we're going to make you a hero with your client. So there's only a couple of possible answers to that. One is I say sure and have a great day, and then I meet the FBI as we're leaving the golf course, and we probably go to jail. The second one is I say, you know, basically heck no, and I call the 800 number, which is for fraud, waste, and abuse. And after a long time, eventually, probably that rep goes to jail. Okay. On the third, which is the one that I actually took, is I kind of assumed, oh, you're joking, right? And politely declined. And I did. But I just want to emphasize that sometimes this stuff really happens. And if you do not have the good evidence of the highest standards of fair and competitive competitive bidding, including, not having little side conversations with vendors during the walkthrough or letting them take you out for a coffee even, you can get to spend some time talking to the FBI, and you do not want to have your school involved with that level of law enforcement. Okay, thanks.
Yeah, there's actually one of the certifications on the main application form is that I understand that any breach of the E-rate rules it can be enforced by law, including imprisonment. Okay, 28 days. Next one, please, Kelly. Thank you. The competitive bidding cycle must be at least 28 days. This is a basic E-rate rule, and you can't count the first day as one. It's not one until 24 hours have expired. So 28 days is the minimum. Now, we like to use 35 days because that gives us the opportunity to, once we're actually at the end of the competitive bidding cycle, check to see if we have enough bids for your needs or valid bids and quality bids for your needs. Particularly when we work with smaller organizations, the sales reps who work on commission look for the big opportunities. They'd rather work with LAUSD than a really small charter school that just opened. So we want to check and make sure that you have valid bids. And after the 28 days have expired, we're allowed to actually solicit on your behalf to say to vendors that we know serve in your community or we have lots of other clients who have that same vendor, and we know that they're reputable vendors. Next one Mark mentioned already was open and fair. The entire premise of the E-rate program is on open and fair competitive bidding. This is because the federal government is giving you money and they want you to spend it wisely. So they want you to choose the most cost-effective solution for your needs. And the best way to do that is to have lots of really good bids so that you can compare the price and make a cost-effective decision for your organization. Okay, we mentioned that there are some ineligible services sometimes. I mentioned the cameras, for example. And another example might be that you're replacing your firewall and getting the appropriate license to go with that. Well, some firewall licenses have what's called advanced threat management components as opposed to just the basic threat management components. And the advanced ones are not eligible. So there usually is a percentage of the license that is not eligible. And those would be the kinds of things that we already know because we've been working here doing this a long time. But also, if you're not sure, we can contact we're not sure, we can contact the manufacturer and we can find out what the agreed upon discount or ineligible portion the vendor has ascertained in concert with the E-rate program administrator. Let's see. This next one, documentation. You must keep documentation for any product or service supported by the E-rate program for a minimum of 10 years after the last date of service. With a 5-year internet contract, you have to wait 10 years after that to retain the documentation. And so you're going to keep that stuff for 15 years. You might be tempted to say, well, I'll keep it till I retire, and then it's somebody else's problem. It still has to be kept. Mark, you have a story.
Yeah, I'll tell one last quick story. This is a school down in Southern California. They had a very visionary ed tech leader in the school, and he applied for E-rate on his own without the help of a consultant. He was very successful. He got $1 million of funding to completely revamp the entire school network. Pretty young guy. They got the money, they spent the money, but even though he was a pretty young guy, he died of a heart attack unexpectedly and abruptly. And of course, that's the one that they decide to audit. And they come and say, so all these nice switches that you have over here, can we see the documentation for that? Can we see the documentation, whatever, for each thing? And of course, it was nowhere to be found. It's not that they didn't have it. Our theory is that it was probably in his garage, but we weren't willing to bother his widow while they were in grieving to try to find it. And of course, these things come with a short deadline, maybe 15 days, maybe if you have a good enough story, 30 days, to basically say, here's all the documentation that you asked for. And if you're missing anything, they're going to take that money back. We're talking about $1 million. So I actually checked into a motel near the school and stayed there for several weeks, reconstructing every piece of documentation I could find. Maybe this document could be found in a file cabinet over here, et cetera, et cetera. And of course, in those days, it wasn't generally electronic. You had to have a 3-ring binder. So I basically built them the 3-ring binder that came as close as I could with as many of the things as I could, and also a good explanation for why there are a few things that were missing. And I managed to save them most of the money. So needless to say, they're still a client today, and in fact, their executive director is on our board of directors. So that's how important the documentation can be. Give back $1 million you've already spent, or be able to show that you did it correctly. Thank you.
Now, the good news is that electronic documentation is acceptable nowadays.
Yeah.
And the official rules are that the applicant is responsible for maintaining the documentation. Now, Learningtech.org retains a repository for every one of our clients that goes back for as long as we have been in association. Okay, next we have E-rate program is proactive. So we've kind of gone through the steps to getting the discounts. Noting, I hope clearly along the way, that every step is important. Every step has to be done exactly right. Every step has to be done according to the deadlines and the timetables. And some of those are hard to calculate. It's not, I mean, the window close date is a specific date, but the date you have to file the second form in the series is 128 days from the funding commitment decision letter or the start of service, whichever is later. So that now you have to do all the math. So as you can see, exceptions to lots of the rules. It's a proactive program. You are eligible for discounts when you've done the whole process exactly correctly. And it is not possible to say, oh, I got all these switches last year. Could I get reimbursed? Well, no, you just can't. You got to do the whole thing the right way from the beginning all the way through to the end. Bring us close to our end. Okay. So what should you be doing right now? Clients should be working with your primary liaison at LearningTech. Probably he or she has already reached out to you to say, come on, we got to work on this because we don't have as much time as you'd like to think we do. If you haven't already heard from your primary liaison, please reach out. We'll make sure that we'll get you to the top of the list quickly. What we need to be doing right now is working together to develop that planning recap so that we know exactly what you want us to accomplish on your behalf during the course of the following year. And we're hoping that those are all going to be done the first week in November. Let's see. Well, we mentioned that we are glad to take questions. Put them in the question box, please. And if you're not already a client, it's not too late to be a client. And we'll be glad to help answer questions for anyone who's got one. If you're shy, you can contact us directly and more privately through our website, the email, or give us a call.
Okay, we do have some questions. The first one is, what qualifies as an eligible free and or reduced lunch student? Family income, question mark?
Yes, it's family income. And it's the nutrition, I can't think of the proper government organization, but every year the poverty levels are published. And it's, if you have this many members in your household and you earn this much, then you are or are not eligible for government programs.
Okay, and another question is, what kind of documentation is needed for Category 2 items like a switch, for example?
Good question.
Yeah.
The E-rate program administrator, the FCC as well, would be very happy to know that you have very clear documentation on everything they've ever helped you obtain. So that means you want to know what is it, make, model, serial number, where it is, and not just where it is, but where it's plugged in, and when it was installed, because you are required to keep Category 2 items for 5 years in an eligible location for a full 5 years. Now, if you're that particular school in your district closes, you're allowed to move the eligible equipment to another eligible site. We'll see. There are some other. After 5 years, though, you can throw it away, you can sell it, you can donate it, and
I would add you should have an asset tag on it. You
that's
should
where I'm
know
going.
where on the rack it is, and what else is plugged into it. Because, for example, that switch might be mostly driving wireless access points, but there's a few cameras attached. We have to cost allocate out the percentage that's being used for an ineligible thing like a camera.
Thank you. That's what I was doing. Okay.
Yeah. So quite a bit of documentation. You need to be very proactive about it before you put it on the rack. Put a tag on it.
Yes, including the funding year on the tag, and then the specific funding request number. That makes it a whole lot easier to find later.
Yeah.
And we have an asset inventory template. If you haven't already built one yourself, we'd be glad to share ours with you. Other questions, Kelly?
Yes. What should we do? What should applicants do if unexpected circumstances prevent them from meeting the Form 471 filing deadline?
Another good question. Sometimes stuff happens. We once had a situation where one of our consultants had a medical emergency and missed the deadline. But we also were able to submit a request for waiver showing that there were extraordinary circumstances, and then we were moved into the in-window category. If you're filing on your own and some sort of emergency comes up, there are mechanisms, the thing called an FCC waiver request. Part of the E-rate rules are that the FCC makes the rules, and then the Universal Service Administrative Company, the administrator of the program, follows the rules. The administrator.
Actually, you mentioning the FCC is actually a really important point, because many people think it's part of the Department of Education and is maybe about to go away or something. It is a separate thing. It's not part of the Department of Organization. FCC is a separate branch of government and has not been touched by any of these big cutbacks.
Yes, and is still in operation.
Yeah. Yes.
Let's see, did I answer that completely enough? I'm not sure if I did. One of the things that we do is that we have a primary liaison and a secondary liaison assigned to each of our clients, so that should I have the medical emergency, Kelly could take over on my behalf immediately. We also ask that our clients always copy our E-rate distribution list for them, so that not only is the primary aware of what's going on, the secondary is also always aware of what's going on with your organization. And our entire team monitors, especially through our internal database, the status of every single funding request for every single client all of the time. So somebody else can jump in and fill in for our primary. This is also why we ask to have permissions in the E-rate Productivity Center portal, which is where all the E-rate activity has to be done. We ask to have permissions for all of the forms for all of our consultants, so anyone can fill in, do what is necessary on your behalf and not skip a beat. Other questions?
That's a great segue for this question. Does it matter who's listed as the main contact, the account administrator in the portal, in the E-rate portal? Does it matter?
That's a good question. The E-rate portal has multiple contact personnel. The most important one is the account administrator, in that is the person who may set permissions, who may establish who's allowed to interact with regard to discounts that are going into a bank account. So that account administrator must be an employee of the entity. not a consultant who also happens to have a domain name email, but an actual employee of the entity. Now, there are other main contacts per form where you can say technical questions, ask me, or there's also a general contact in the E-Rate Productivity Center, which is usually superintendent or maybe an operations person. But yes, the account administrator should always be an employee of the organization.
Okay, I think this is the last one. I'm in California. I've heard of CTF. Can you tell us more about that program?
California Teleconnect Fund, CTF. This is a California state program run by the California Public Utilities Commission, and it provides additional discounts for eligible, E-rate eligible Category 1 services. And the really good news is it stacks on top of your E-rate discounts. So if you have a 70% discount and you get your 70% discounts from E-rate, you're also eligible for 50% of the balance after E-rate, so another 15% discount on those same services. With the exception, it's always an exception, that you can't have more CTF discounts than you have E-rate discounts, which seems sort of reasonable. If the feds aren't going to give it to you, the state shouldn't give you more, probably. Right.
Okay,
Right.
that is
That,
it.
everything? All right, that'll hold us for now. If you still have more questions, please feel free to submit them through the E-rate at Learningtech.org email or give us a call. We will provide PDF of the slides after we process it. And I guess that's it. Thank you for attending.
I think there was one question near the very beginning that might have been overlooked, and that was whether there would be a recording available of the meeting. And I can tell you that I noticed that the recording was started a little late. So if there's a recording, it will be missing the first slide or two. But we will share all the slides.
Okay. Yeah. Right.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much.